at a Thanksgiving dinner full of medals, speeches, and official heroes. One smug officer decides to humiliate the quiet woman at the end of the table, saying she's done nothing worthy of sitting among them. The laughter dies. She doesn't fight back. She doesn't even flinch. Minutes later, the elderly general beside her notices a strange scar on her wrist and asks a single quiet question that freezes the entire room. Were you the one they called Specter? From that moment on, nothing at that table is what it seemed. A buried mission, a legendary call sign, and a truth that will tear someone's reputation apart. You think you know who the hero is, but by the end of this story, you'll realize you were wrong. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. Every new voice helps keep these American redemption stories alive. Welcome to the mission now, let's begin. The community hall smelled like turkey, cinnamon, and stale coffee. Black and white photos of old missions covered the walls, frozen little smiles on people who had seen hell up close. Laughter echoed, glasses clinked, and in the middle of it all, Amelia Hayes felt like a point out of formation. She adjusted the sleeve of her dark blazer, hiding the scar on her left wrist. The invitation still echoed in her head. You deserve to be among your own. Signed by General Henry Whitmore. She almost threw it away. Almost. In the end, the exhaustion of spending years hiding weighed more. Relax, Hayes. Worst that happens is somebody spills gravy in your lap, joked Sergeant Miles Carter beside her, puffing out his stomach under the already tight uniform. Not sure I trust that worst coming from you, she replied with a faint smile. On the other side of the table, Lieutenant Emma Brooks watched in silence. The scar running across her face wasn't as deep as the memory of the night of the crash. She owed her life to the woman beside her, but almost no one there knew. Their bond had been built through smoke, blood, and radiostatic, a kind of pact that didn't fit on a medal. Farther down the table, Major Andrew Collins told yet another story where he was the center of his own hero gallery. The medals on his chest shone almost as much as the confidence in his voice. He was the kind of officer who'd grown up listening to official versions of everything and never bothered to check what got left out. When the master of ceremonies called for a toast, everyone stood. To those who came home, to those who didn't, to those who carry scars no one sees. Amelia raised her glass slowly, and to the ones who got turned into footnotes, she added silently before taking a drink. Shortly after, the volume in the hall dropped almost by reflex. General Henry Whitmore walked in, leaning on a simple cane, without fanfare but with a presence time hadn't managed to dim. He went on greeting familiar faces until he reached the head table. "Captain Hayes," he said, with a slight smile. "Good to see you made it. Wasn't sure it was a good idea." "Sir," she admitted. "Oh, I was," he replied, taking the seat beside her. The general's attentive gaze wasn't judgmental. It was the look of someone who kept pieces of an old puzzle in his pocket. The food arrived, and conversations loosened up. Stories about sandstorms, unbearable officers, and platoon inside jokes. Amelia joined in very little, answering when asked but always staying on the surface. She knew the name Hayes still came with an asterisk in a lot of people's heads, until Collins finally looked at her with actual interest. For the first time. "So, you're the famous Captain Hayes, huh?" The noise around them didn't disappear, but it seemed to pull back a little, like the table had switched over to a different frequency. Amelia set her fork down calmly, like someone choosing exactly where to step in a minefield. "Yes, sir, I am. I served in the 5th Air Rescue Squadron." She kept her gaze steady. Beside her, Miles stopped the joke he was about to crack. Collins tilted his head, searching his memory. 5th Squadron, the one with the crash. Right? The word crash cut through the air like a silent blade. Emma felt her fingers tighten around her glass, without realizing. "Sir, it's Thanksgiving," Miles murmured. "There are better ways to start a conversation. I'm just making small talk." Sergeant, Collins shot back, not even looking at him. We used to hear about that case at the academy. Messed up mission, altered flight path, helicopter down, and the captain's name always right there, glued to the incident reports. The table seemed to hang in midair for a second. There were no raised voices, but there was intent. Some people looked away. Others paid extra attention. Whitmore was still silent, but his expression had hardened. My story ended in a report, not in the truth, Amelia replied, her voice too calm for the weight of the sentence. And reports, sometimes, just pick what they feel like telling. Collins let out a short laugh. I get that everyone here has their burden, Captain, but this table was meant for people who did something. Let's say, decisive. People who changed the course of operations, who led under fire, who left a clear mark. He gestured toward the medals around them. The obvious heroes. Emma took a deep breath. You have no idea what she did, Major. Oh, I've got a pretty good idea of what I read. He shot back. Flight path, altered without authorization. Aircraft lost. Investigation for questionable conduct. Honestly. He leaned back, craw, and dropped Seawater's. Captain Hayes did that was so worthy of earning a place at this table. The words weren't loud, but everyone at the table heard them. The noise from the other tables turned into background static. For a second, Amelia seriously thought about standing up and walking out. All she had to do was push the chair back, excuse herself, throw out a mechanical good night, and go back to the comfortable exile she'd been living in. Instead, she took a deep breath, tasted the bitterness of memory rising up, and answered, I'm not going to argue merit with someone who only knows the most convenient version of the story, Major. Miles went rigid. Emma dropped her gaze, annoyed at her own cowardice years, before when she'd stayed quiet in moments like this. Whitmore, next to Amelia, rested his hand on his cane, thoughtful. That's when he noticed, peeking out from under the blazer sleeve, the irregular scar on her wrist. He didn't say anything. Yet, years earlier, the night didn't smell like turkey or spices. It smelled like metal, oil, and thin air. The helicopter cut through the dark sky with the low thrum of its rotors, and Amelia's world was reduced to screens, numbers, and voices inside her headset. Specter, comes check, the pilot said. This is Specter. Channels clear. Ghost 1. Maintain Delta pattern until the extraction point, Amelia replied, eyes moving over the panel. Behind her, Miles was checking gear. If this works, first round's on me. If it doesn't, well, then you're gonna have to put up with my ghost haunting you. I'd rather deal with radio interference than your ghost. She shot back, without looking away from the data. The weather forecast was crap. Strong winds. Heavy clouds limited visibility. Even so, the order to take off had come stamped with urgency and a heavy signature. Colonel Richard Kessler. Priority extraction. No possibility of delay. On the Haju, Emma's voice came intense, straight from the ground. Specter, this is Brooks. To critically wounded. The team is exhausted, and we're down to scraping the bottom of the ammo. If you're late, I'm gonna be sending you coordinates for body recovery, not live evacuation. We're 8 minutes out. Hold your position and minimize exposure. I'll adjust the route to hit less turbulence, Amelia replied. When she opened the updated flight plan, something bothered her. Points slightly shifted. Last-minute tweaks, pushing the helicopter toward an area with a bad history of hostiles and sudden storms. The file showed recent approval tied to Kessler's command. Command, this is Specter. She called on a more secure channel, requesting route confirmation. There are significant discrepancies at Bravo and Charlie. Request authorization to adjust. The answer came back dry. Negative. Specter. Executors filed. Direct authorization from Colonel Kessler. Amelia's pen froze over the map. She knew the weight of disobeying. She also knew the weight of blindly obeying when everything was screaming the opposite. Miles came closer, reading her face. Is that your "this is gonna go to shit" face? It's my "if I follow this, it might be worse" face, she muttered. Hayes, you know if this goes wrong, they're gonna point at you anyway, right? So pick the version where more people walk out alive. She didn't laugh. Her fingers flew over the controls, adjusting key waypoints. Ghost 1, this is Specter, quietly altering course, prioritizing a zone with less turbulence and lower chance of interception. Trust me. The helicopter pushed forward into the dark, and with a few clicks, Amelia had chosen between her career and her conscience. The first sign wasn't an alarm. It was a strange shudder, a different noise from the engines. Then the alerts came in a cascade. Specter, we're losing hydraulic pressure. The pilot yelled, "This isn't wind. This is a major failure." Amelia ran through the data in the blink of an eye. Hours earlier, the helicopter had cleared maintenance with no relevant note on record. Nothing in theory explained the chaos in practice. And yet, the red lights were flashing like the system had just decided to die all at once. Ghost 1, try to stabilize. I'm looking for a spot for an emergency landing, she ordered. On the ground, Emma heard the difference in the rotor sound and froze. Specter, what's going on? Aircraft is compromised. Prep the area for impact. Not a smooth landing. The helicopter started dropping way too fast. Creaks, vibrations, the panel looking like a Christmas tree on a bad day. This thing's coming apart mid-air, Miles shouted, hanging on. This smells a lot more like someone's hand than an angry cloud. Amelia pinged command again. Critical aircraft failure. Requesting immediate change to support and evac plan. Negativi. Maintain protocol until further orders. She cut the channel. Protocol doesn't keep a helicopter from falling out of the sky. She found a less uneven patch of terrain and passed on the coordinates. Ghost 1, force a controlled landing here. It's the least bad option. Copy, the pilot answered. If we walk away from this, you get to pick the song at my retirement party. On the ground, Emma ran, dragging soldiers and wounded out of the clearing. Everyone out of the center. Now, forget the gear. The sound of the helicopter grew deafening, low and unstable. Impact split the night in two. Metal, fire, dust. The fuselage snapped like a cheap toy. Inside, Amelia felt her body thrown, the belt yanking her back hard, and something ripping deep into her left wrist. The taste of blood hit at the same time as the smell of fuel. When she vaguely came to, the world was a blur of orange and black. The radio was still clipped to her vest. Specter, reporting. Crash confirmed. Multiple survivors. She muttered no idea, if anyone could hear. Outside, Emma was running toward the fire instead of away from it. That night wasn't going to end there. It was only just starting to get twisted. The heat made the air ripple. Every breath hurt. Amelia unbuckled her harness and assessed fast. Thompson unconscious. Another crew member pinned under twisted metal. Miles bleeding, but on his feet. She didn't have time to be scared. Miles, get Thompson out first, she ordered. I'll help the other one. You can barely hold up your own arm. Hayes! He protested, then pretend you didn't notice, and move. Together, they dragged Thompson through the opening. Outside, Emma appeared out of the smoke. Send him this way, she shouted, pulling the wounded man by the shoulders. She barely had time for instructions. Amelia was already gone again. The second crewman was groaning, trapped in a metal sandwich. I can't feel my legs. Means you're getting carried out, not left behind, Amelia answered, looking for a leverage point. Her wrist throbbed. The makeshift bandage soaked through. A panel shifted and tore her skin even more. She bit down on her lip but didn't stop. Pressure, leverage, more pressure until the metal gave. Miles got a grip on the guy's shoulders. Come on, man. Hayes didn't bust her ass for you to die sitting there. That's when Amelia heard the sound she feared most. That deep, different hiss that meant the fuel tank was about to turn everything into a much bigger fireball. Everyone fall back, she shouted, on the radio and with her voice. Now, they ran as best they could. The flash swallowed half the night when the tank blew. The shockwave threw them to the ground. For a few seconds, the world went silent like someone had cut the soundtrack. Face down against hot dirt, Amelia pulled in whatever air hurt the least. Command. This is Specter. Crash with survivors. Lives saved due to route change. I accept responsibility. She didn't have time to think about how far that sentence would travel. Voices. Please. Screams still echoed in her head. Somewhere else. That same night, a different kind of voice was taking note. She admitted she altered the route. Days later, the base felt too clean, too cold, too organized. An irritating contrast to the chaos still burning in the minds of anyone who'd been in the crash. Amelia walked to the interview room with her wrist immobilized and a dull weight in her chest. On the other side of the metal table, Agent Cole Maddox was organizing folders. He had the posture of someone who lives between paperwork and ethical dilemmas. Captain Hayes, have a seat, please. Controversial, Captain. Actually, she muttered, dry. He pretended not to hear. He turned on the recorder. Interview with Captain Amelia Hayes. Call sign Specter. Regarding the incident involving the 5th Air Rescue Squadron. Incident. Crash. Explosion. Dead. Pain. Warji. The first questions were technical. Takeoff time. Flight plan. Weather conditions. Amelia answered everything with blunt precision. She didn't need to look at a file. It was burned into deep to need paper. Achi-1 point chart order. This is the route approved by command. This is the actual flight path. You altered it without documented authorization. I requested authorization. Was denied. I changed it anyway. You understand that qualifies as direct disobedience to the responsible colonel. He pressed. I understand that not changing it would have qualified as cowardice. She shot you back. Between getting screwed in the paperwork and watching everyone turn into a statistic, I chose the first option. He jotted something down. You cited possible sabotage in your preliminary report. That wasn't wordplay. She replied. Simultaneous failures in stable systems. Weird maintenance logs. Route tampered with at the last minute. You can call it coincidence if that helps you sleep at night. Maddox's side. Proving sabotage takes more than suspicion. Proving I disobeyed is easy. I just did it again in front of you. She locked eyes with him. The question is, do you just want to wrap this up fast? Or do you want to know why someone messed with what they shouldn't have touched? He didn't answer right away. But it was the first time he felt that this case wasn't just another box to tick. Colonel Richard Kessler walked the hallways like a man who knew exactly how far his shadow reached. His uniform was immaculate, medals in place. Expression relaxed the look of someone used to seeing his version of events win. He walked into Maddox's office without knocking. Agent, do you have a preliminary picture yet? Partial, sir, Maddox replied. There are odd failures in the aircraft, suspicious maintenance records, but nothing conclusive. What is clear is that Captain Hayes altered the route without final authorization. Kessler took the paper, skimmed it. So we've got the basics. Reckless decision, crash, equipment loss. Not good, but simple. People understand that kind of story. There are signs suggesting interference before takeoff, Maddox insisted, and some strange internal messages about an acceptable narrative. The colonel gave a humorless smile. Agent, whenever something goes wrong, the theories start breeding. If we put internal sabotage down on paper without irrefutable proof, we're digging a trust hole that's hard to fill. Or we're stopping someone from digging under the troops, Maddox muttered. Low. Kessler ignored that. Command needs a clear, responsible party, not ghosts. An officer who admitted she altered the route is objectively accountable. A hypothetical saboteur is not. Later, in the hallway, Amelia crossed paths with him. Kessler stopped, looking her over like a damaged piece of equipment that could be written off. Captain Hayes, I hear your version of events has been Creative. I just reported what I saw, sir, she answered, including failures that shouldn't have happened and decisions that ignored the ground reality. I operate from a broader perspective, he said. People at the tip of the spear don't always see the whole picture, and people far from the blast don't always hear metal tearing apart. She shot you back. He stepped half a pace closer. The line between courage and insubordination is thin, and in the records, I'm the one who draws that line. Captain, maybe it's time someone took the pen out of your hand, she thought, but didn't say. When he walked away, Amelia was sure of two things. There was no real interest in finding out who had actually tampered with the aircraft and if the story stayed as it was. The name stamped as the problem would be hers. The dining hall smelled like reused oil and old coffee. Emma dropped her tray on the table across from Miles and sat down with a sigh. If I stare at this mashed potato any longer, I'm going to be sure it's drywall spackle. I doubt it. Spackle has more texture, Miles replied, nudging his own tray. You see the draft of the report? Emma asked. Yeah, he said. Serious. They boiled it all down to Captain's controversial decision and resulting crash. Nice. If I hadn't been there, I might have bought it. Agent Maddox walked in to grab coffee. He tried to hustle right back out, but Emma called him, Agent, you got a minute or just 59 seconds? He sighed and sat. A minute and a half. Make it count. If you want to understand what happened, you need to hear from people who were in the bird and under it. Emma began. That helicopter didn't go down because Hayes woke up in the mood to be stubborn. Miles added, if we'd flown the original route, we would have been sitting ducks. Her change cut down the damage. Nobody's saying it was perfect. We're saying without it, it would have been a mass grave. You to backing the sabotage theory? Maddox asked. We're backing the theory that it wasn't bad luck and a grumpy cloud, Miles answered. There was way too much wrong before we ever lifted off. The problem is, the people who benefit from the poor judgment version have more stars on their shoulders than you do, Maddox said. And more friends. Emma took a breath. I know the risk. I know starring this up isn't good for my record, but I've already seen people die for obeying blindly. I'm not repeating that mistake by staying quiet now. Maddox was silent for a few seconds, weighing it. I'll dig deeper into the maintenance records and hangar access logs. But if I pull too hard and certain names pop out, I might become a problem too. Sometimes being the problem means you did the right thing, Emma said. Or it just means you're about to get crushed, he muttered, standing. But I'm too old to sleep perfectly anyway. Alone in the digital records room, Maddox scrolled through line after line of data. Hangar access times, maintenance logs, internal emails. The more he looked, the less this case felt like an accident. He found a maintenance entry performed by a sergeant who, in another document, was listed as hospitalized off-base that same day. Someone hedged the Stegivan there. On the security footage, at hours when the hangar was supposed to be empty, two shadows appeared. One in uniform, one with a hood. No badge swipes. No logged entries in the system. It was like they'd walked through the door without going past the reader. In internal messages, one phrase stuck under his skin, the narrative needs to be operationally acceptable. We can't have another scandal involving the colonel. The colonel wasn't named, but the context pointed pretty clearly. Maddox printed out part of it and stashed a copy outside the official system. It wasn't exactly by the book, but by now he understood that trusting only the normal channels was basically handing the eraser to the wrong people. In a brief conversation with Amelia, he opened up a bit. You weren't seeing ghosts. There's something wrong in the maintenance and access logs. Does that change the report? She asked. It changes how much of an accomplice I'll feel like if I pretend I didn't see it, he answered. Now, officially changing a narrative that protects powerful people is a different story. So, even with proof of sabotage, I can still end up as the scapegoat. Amelia pressed. You can, he replied, honestly, because stories with one clear culprit are easier to swallow. He left the room feeling like he was standing on top of a mine. Any wrong step could blow up his career. That's why he hid the unlabeled file somewhere that, if he ever got shut up, someone else might still find it. The investigation ended, but the story didn't. The final report came out without words like innocent or guilty. It chose comfortable, almost sterile terms instead. Questionable conduct under extreme conditions. Route change resulting in significant operational consequences. In practice, that meant doors slowly closing. Amelia wasn't brought before a court-martial, didn't officially lose her rank, but she was pushed into desk jobs, away from radios, helicopters, and field decisions. The call sign Specter disappeared from training materials. It became almost a badly told secret. Miles went on with his career carrying a debt he couldn't shake. He knew he was alive because someone had decided to pick a fight with protocol. He called Amelia randomly, showed up without warning, tried to remind her and himself that what she'd done that night hadn't been some ego trip. Emma was awarded a medal for bravery. Nice speech. Medal? Photos. No one mentioned the name of the person who had coordinated the chaos over the radio. When she tried to get more involved in defending Amelia, she got subtle warnings. You've already been through enough. Don't risk what you've built by digging into something that's been put to rest. Maddox moved on 2 other investigations, but he didn't forget the unlabeled folder. Sometimes he'd open it, read through the documents again, and wonder at what point he decided to just keep living with that weight. Kessler, for a while, kept climbing. Then rumors about resource skimming, smuggling, and report tampering started making their way through hallways he didn't fully control. Nothing public, nothing that brought him down outright, just cracks. When the invite to the Thanksgiving dinner arrived years later, Amelia let out a short, dry laugh. Among decorated veterans, it said. Decorated. The word itself seemed to know it wasn't about her. She almost tossed the envelope until she saw Whitmore's name. Attached, a note. It's time you take the place that was always yours, not the one they shoved you into. She spent 2 days just looking at the invitation on the table. Going meant exposing herself again. Staying meant officially accepting the exile. In the end, she put on the blazer, covered the scar, and went. Back in the present, after Collins's jab, Amelia felt the old urge to stand up, excuse herself, and leave. She could say she wasn't feeling well, blame the food, the londe. No one would question her. For a few seconds, she mapped out the path to the door in her head. Then she felt a light hand touch the table near hers. Whitmore's hand. He didn't grab her, didn't ask her to stay. He just looked at her like he was saying, if you go, this story stays theirs. She took a slow breath and stayed in her seat. As she reached for her glass, her sleeve slipped up a bit more, revealing the scar on her wrist. The general's eyes dropped to it. He studied it with the focus of someone who was finally seeing the missing proof that tied old memories together. Captain Hayes, he called. Come. That wound on your wrist. That was from that mission, wasn't it? It was, sir, she answered. From the 5th Squadron crash. Several people at the table reacted to the name. It wasn't a popular topic, but everyone had heard some version of it. Almost none of them told the whole story. If my memory's still good for anything, Whitmore went on, there was a comms operator on that mission with a call sign. Hard to forget. He seemed to savor the memory. Specter, the one that always popped up in the raw reports when things were on the edge of going completely sideways. The word landed heavy on the table. Miles clenched his jaw. Emma felt her heart race. Some of the older vets lifted their eyebrows slightly. Collins looked lost. I read logs where that voice was coordinating impossible evacuations, adjusting routes under fire, making calls nobody wanted on their record, the general said. Funny how that name vanished from the final versions of certain reports. He looked straight at Amelia. Captain Hayes. You were Specter, weren't you? For a moment she felt that ancient instinct. Deny, downplay, dodge. But if she did that, she'd be helping the same system that had chewed her up. She held his gaze. Yes, "Sir, I was Specter." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. The whole table seemed to rearrange itself around that one word. Specter. It wasn't just a call sign. For some of them, it was a legend on the radio. A voice that showed up when everything was headed straight for the ditch. Miles was the first to react, with a half-smile heavy with pride. Always thought it was a waste the world didn't know that. He muttered. An older veteran across the table leaned in. I was on an op that ended with more of us alive because somebody on the other end of the line saw a path where there wasn't one. The call sign was Specter. Spent years never knowing who it was. Collins looked from one face to another, trying to connect the dots. Wait, that's Specter. The same one in those evac case studies. I always thought it was some kind of collective code name. No, Major, Whitmore replied. It was a person, Juan Person, whose full name rarely made it into the official documents, but without whom some missions would have been complete disasters. The general took a breath and added, and, to my complete lack of surprise, that person is sitting here tonight being told she hasn't done anything worthy of thanksgiving. Collins swallowed hard. With all due respect, General, that still doesn't erase the fact that the mission ended in a crash. It doesn't, Emma agreed, finally stepping fully into the conversation, her voice firm. But it does erase the idea that the blame is simple and convenient. If she hadn't done what she did, I wouldn't be sitting at this table, and neither would half the survivors. Miles backed her up. The original route was suicidal. That chopper was sabotaged, whether the report admits it or not, and Hayes' decision cut the number of coffins. If that's not worth something, I don't know what is. Whitmore let their words settle for a few seconds, and then added, I saw documents that never made it into the final case file, Major. I saw tampered logs, sketchy maintenance entries, messages worried about protecting the colonel, and I saw, in the middle of all that, one officer very conveniently pushed into the scapegoat slot. Everyone at the table could feel something shifting inside, the comfortable narrative starting to crack. So before you ask what she did to deserve this seat, the general concluded, maybe the real question is who didn't do their job and why. Collins looked smaller in his chair. Instinctively, he searched for a friendly smirk around him, found none. The easy laughter that had followed him earlier was gone. All that was left was the sound of his own conscience. He took a deep breath, looked at Amelia, and for the first time didn't see a case. He saw a person. I was arrogant, he said. No sugarcoating. I spoke based on rumor, half-told lessons, pre-chewed versions. I never went after the full story. No one clapped. No one interrupted. The silence was space for him to finish. I said you didn't deserve to be here, he went on, when I'm the one who hadn't done the bare minimum to earn the right to talk about what you went through. He swallowed hard. If I'd spent even a third of the time reading raw reports and listening to people who were actually there, maybe I wouldn't have opened my mouth like I did. Amelia studied him, in no rush to respond. How many times had people questioned her right to be somewhere without even looking her in the eye? It's not the first time someone decides where I get to sit, she said finally, but it is one of the rare times someone has the guts to admit they spoke without that right. He nodded, accepting it. If there's any way I can help fix this, I want to, even if it means putting my face out there in the same places where I helped repeat the wrong version. Before the mood could turn unbearably heavy, a veteran raised his glass. I'd like to propose a toast, he said, to the ones who did the right thing when it was easier to hide behind paperwork, to the ones who were a voice on the radio and silence in the reports. To Specter. To Specter, Emma echoed, raising her glass. To Specter, Miles repeated. One by one, the others followed, including Collins, who lifted his glass like he was also lifting an apology. The sound of the glasses meeting wasn't loud, but at that table, it meant more than any applause. After the toast, the table didn't go back to what it had been. No one seemed willing to pretend everything was perfectly normal. The questions that came now didn't have the tone of distant curiosity, but of people who genuinely wanted to understand where everything had been twisted. In a quieter moment, Whitmore approached Amelia holding a glass of water, as if that simple gesture were an excuse to lean in and speak softly. "I still have the raw reports from that investigation," he said. "Comes logs, maintenance records, internal messages, things that never made it into the final case file, kept for nostalgia," she asked, a little bitter. "For precaution," the general corrected. At the time, any attempt to dig deeper into the matter was seen as a threat to institutional stability. Translation: they protected important people, including the colonel who signed off on your route. "Kessler," Amelia finished, without hesitation. "That's the one." Whitmore stared at the bottom of his glass for a second. "These days, his reach isn't what it used to be, but he's not dead and gone. Still has friends on boards, still writes recommendations, still knows who to call." She felt her chest tighten. "If we stir this up, he'll push back. Or at least someone will on his behalf." "He will," the general agreed, not sugarcoating it. "And you're better off walking into this knowing that from the first minute. This is not the part of the movie where everyone claps." Emma, who was walking up, heard the end of that. "If she goes into this," she repeated. "General, with all due respect, the only wrong move here would be her not going in." "Andusto." Miles showed up right behind her, as if pulled by the same gravity. "If Hayes is going back to the front line, I'm not watching from a window. You understand," Whitmore continued, now looking at all three of them, "that a formal review can trigger coincidences, unexpected audits, invitations that mysteriously never arrive, opportunities that suddenly disappear. No one's going to send you a letter saying we're retaliating. They'll just start pulling quiet levers." Emma shrugged, but her eyes betrayed the fear she kept under control. "I've spent a long swallowing crap to protect my file. If I'm going to lose something, it'd rather it be for telling the truth than for my mouth shut, Miles nodded. And honestly, if I've got to carry scars, I'd rather it be from taking fire head-on than in the back." Collins, who'd been listening from a distance, walked over slowly. "If you take this to a board, I want to be there," he said. "I know I don't have a lot of credit left after what I said tonight, but I sure as hell can use my last name and my service record to shove the door open instead of helping keep it shut." "We're going to need exactly that," Whitmore replied. "People with the kind of profile that used to parrot the official line now saying maybe they were misled. That creates cracks where there used to be only walls." Amelia took it all in without answering right away. Her brain was already sketching out scenarios. Tense hearings, skeptical stares, loaded questions trying to shove her back into the defendant's chair. "If we open this box, there's no putting the lid back on," she said. "Not for me. Not for any of you. You've spent too long trying to live like the box was closed," Emma pointed out. "It wasn't. It was just sitting on top of you." The sentence hung in the air for a moment. To be comfortable." Eventually, Amelia nodded. "Then we open it. But in a way they can't just dismiss as some bitter captain throwing a tantrum." Whitmore made a firm little gesture. "Tomorrow, I'll contact the Veterans Council and the Integrity Commission. Officially, no anonymous letters. They'll have to answer in writing." He pulled a small notebook from his pocket and started jotting down names, dates, references. As he wrote, he added in a more serious tone, "One more thing, Captain. Once this request goes in, it won't just be about clearing your name. It'll be a direct fight with people whose job is making sure certain things stay buried." "Then they'd better dig carefully," Amelia replied, "because this time we're not going down into that hole alone." The parking lot was nearly empty when Amelia stepped outside. The cold night air hit her face like it was trying to help her wake up from everything that had happened. The streetlights cast long shadows on the asphalt, and each step felt heavier than the last, not from physical fatigue, but from what was ahead. "Hey, Specter," Miles called, catching up with hurried steps. "You really like stress testing my frequency, don't you?" She replied, "Every time I hear that, my brain thinks a mayday is about to come through. Technically, it is." He shot back. "It's just a different kind of crossfire now." Emma appeared a second later, wrapped in her coat. "In there, while you guys were talking to the general, I kept picturing the look on the brass's faces when the review request hits their inbox. They're not gonna like it. They're not gonna like anything." Amelia corrected. "Their first reflex will be to pretend it's just paperwork. At least, until they realize there are way too many witnesses attached." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A notification popped up on the screen. Protocol notice petition to the Veterans Council. Whitmore's name was in the subject line. The general hadn't even waited for morning. She opened it quickly. In a few formal lines, it was all there. The request to reevaluate the 5th Squadron case, referencing comes logs, maintenance records, and possible improper interference. At the end, the sentence, "I request priority consideration, given the potential institutional impact." Amelia's stomach flipped. "It's official. He already filed it," she said, showing them the screen. "Good," Miles replied. "The faster it moves, the less time they've got to work it from the shadows, or the sooner they start," Emma countered. Her honesty landed hard. "Let's not kid ourselves. They're going to try everything to spin this as disgruntled captain trying to rewrite history." The phone buzzed again. Almost immediately, another message, this time just from an unknown number. The text was short. Some stories were buried for a reason. "Captain, certain ghosts don't like hearing their names out loud." Amelia felt a real shiver for the first time that night, a chill that didn't come from the wind. She turned the screen toward the other two. "Somebody's scared," Miles concluded, his voice more serious, and scared people tend to get dangerous. "Could be just a bluff," Emma said. "Or it could be someone who knows exactly how far this can go if the truth comes out in full." Amelia took a long breath, keeping her eyes on the screen for a few seconds before locking the phone. "Whoever it is, that message already did half our work for us," she said, "because they just admitted there's something buried." They walked together toward the cars in silence for a few yards. The night felt thicker, but also clearer in another way. There was no going back. "You think it's worth it?" Emma asked, stopping next to her own car. "Not just for you, for everyone. For the ones who aren't here anymore." Amelia looked down at her wrist, tracing the scar with her finger like reading a word carved into her skin. "If we accept the convenient version as final, in a few years someone's going to use my case as an example of problem officer who was reined in just in time. And I am not signing off on that." Miles rested his forearm on the roof of her car. "And what if, somewhere along the way, Kessler decides to show up in person, not as a shadow sitting right across from you with a lawyer and his offended face on?" "Even better," Amelia answered, "because I spent years being judged by people who never had to look me in the eye while they did it. I'd like to see how he does when he has to hear, in front of everyone, what he did to that mission." Her phone chimed once more, this time with a message from Cole Maddox. "Just got a copy of the review. Request. I already know which files I'm pulling out of the cabinet. If I mysteriously disappear, you know where to start looking. Check the folder with no label." Amelia laughed quietly at his attempt at humor, but she understood the message. He knew the risk. "So that's it," she said, opening her car door. "The war just changed battlefields, but it's still a war. You sure you want to go back into it?" "Specter," Emma asked. She thought for a moment, then answered I was never out. "They just took my radio. Now they're handing it back." Driving home, the city slid by in a blur of lights outside the windows. Somewhere, in an office, someone was probably already reading the review request with a furrowed brow. Somewhere else, maybe a former colonel was picking up a phone to make calls that would leave no written trace. In the middle of all that, one thing solidified in Amelia's mind. This time, when they tried to twist the narrative, it wouldn't be her alone against a pile of paperwork. There were witnesses, files, retired generals, restless investigators and, above all, a story that refused to stay buried. The call sign Specter echoed in her head not as a ghost doomed to relive the same moment forever, but as a call code, a reminder that her job had always been the same. Show up when everything was falling apart and find an unlikely path through. The terrain had changed. The principle hadn't. And somewhere, on the other end of the line, somebody else knew that voice was transmitting again. If this story moved you, then you belong here. At Redemption of America, every story could truth. Broken doesn't mean shame, not. So, make sure you subscribe, leave your comment about the moment that hit you hardest, and share this video with someone who needs to remember what redemption looks like. Until next time, stay strong, stay honorable, and never forget, America redeems its own.